Welcome to In Your Element, the podcast that unlocks practical wisdom in higher education, where leadership meets real talk. I'm Brendan Hinkle, Manager of Solutions Engineering here at Element 451.
And I'm Daniela Norden, Element 451's Director of Customer Success and Engagement. Join us every other Thursday for discussions with everyday heroes using Element 451 in enrollment, marketing, and student success. We'll unlock the practical tips to help you make waves on your campus.
In Your Element is a part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below.
Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.
All right, we are live here in Your Element, live at NAGAP in Louisville, Kentucky, the GEM Summit 2024. And I have with me Shane Baglini from Muhlenberg College, the Senior Director of Marketing. He is here with us, and we just had to get him in the room. Shane, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm a little tired. I've been here since Tuesday and presented twice, but hanging in there. Overall, pretty good.
Yeah, I hear that. And also, I forget to mention, I can't forget this, we are also co-Enrollify podcast hosts.
That's right.
So we share that. So not only do you get to come on to In Your Element because at Muhlenberg you all are using Element, but we also get to be, I guess co-workers.
Colleagues. Yeah,
right. Yeah, right. We're colleagues. So awesome to have you as kind of the first colleague guest on the show. Awesome. And it's been fun. Yeah, we've been here. I got here Tuesday as well. I am also exhausted, but it has been a good time. Last night at the Palace was so much fun.
Yeah.
And so they had a get together, kind of a reception last night at the Palace in downtown Louisville. And there was live music, there was dancing, there was bourbon tastings. It was incredible.
Yeah, it's a good time for people to let loose a little bit, right?
Yeah,
for stressful jobs.
It's not all business, right? A little bit of play at these conferences, and that is totally okay. So, of course, this is In Your Element. So we're going to be talking about Element, but I know specifically since this is a live episode here at NAGAP, this is where you're in your element. So tell us a little bit about why you're in your element here, and a little bit about what you do here, what you've done here this week and historically at this conference.
Yeah, so this one's an interesting one for me. This is, it's a graduate enrollment management heavy conference. At Muhlenberg, I am sort of running our enrollment management function in the grad space, though that's not really my background, which is kind of one of those things that it's, other duties assigned. But it's really interesting to hear from, the Fran Reeds and Keith Ramsdells and people that are veterans of the GEM space, Kitty Payne, to just pick up tips from them because it's such a complex student kind of life cycle compared to undergrad.
For sure.
And so it's really good to learn from people that live and breathe this stuff. And, conferences are great for, seeing old faces, meeting new faces, catching up with people. And so that's been good.
Networking, sharing tips, sharing tricks. One of the things that you had a really cool experience in this week that I was like, that seems like it was a fun time, was the Pre-Summit Institute with artists. Tell us a little bit about that, what you all talked about, what you did there.
Yeah, so we ran the Pre-Summit Institute on Wednesday morning. And, I want to say there was probably about 60 to 65 people in there.
Yeah.
Really good turnout. And we focused on AI and upping your marketing game in the GEM space with AI. We had a really eager to learn crowd. And, I'll be honest, I probably learned as much as the crowd from artists.
Right.
It was super informative. So we've walked through, the basics of AI, generative AI, large language models, things like that. And then in real time, we're building a series of custom GPTs to sort of mimic the process of launching a new graduate program. So we were building a marketing copywriter, a market researcher. We were building a brand strategist, custom GPT. And all of those things together can sort of work with one another.
Yeah.
And, looking at people's faces, an artist was doing this. And, some really advanced, custom GPT instructions that I'm looking at, this is like way above my, aptitude. So it was great to see people really engaged in that because it's a complex topic. And so we could have gone all day, but we really needed that kind of good 3-hour chunk to do that.
Yeah. And I honestly, so a lot of times whenever I'm talking about it with people, it's easy to say once you've done it and once you've been in it for a while to say, oh, it's really simple to do this. Like building a custom GPT, whenever you kind of understand what you're doing, it's very straightforward. You're setting the parameters and then you're going and building it. But if you don't know it, it's like putting a piece of furniture together without the instructions. You're like, all right, where do I start? What do I do?
Yeah, and the really nice thing that artists did was give people a nice framework to go home with. So we had a shared Google Doc going. We were updating it live as we went. It got shared to all the attendees. And they've got, really an expert in the field of generative AI has given them a tool to go home with and say, okay, I can fill in the blanks on this and have a working custom GPT for whatever my use case is in 10 minutes, 15 minutes. So that's really cool. And I think, on the admissions front and sort of in the greater scheme of academia, there is still some, hesitancy about AI and how we can use it. And is it, we got a lot of questions about security and all of that really insightful stuff. And so it was a great discussion, but to see people really embrace it and want to learn and show and just show up a day early to the conference
To do that.
It was really cool.
Well, and it's cool to see the light bulb moments too. That's one of my favorite parts. And even just sitting there, because I was there for the first hour, capturing some of the moments. And even when it started, it was quiet, just 30 minutes in, and you see a hand raise, then another hand raise, and then the questions start, and then the curiosity starts, and then you're like, it's starting, right? That's when it starts to trigger those light bulb moments.
Yeah, and you're right. That's exactly what happened. People were kind of starting to realize, oh, wow, I can do this with this tool that I didn't even think of. For me, that light bulb moment, and I told this to the audience, was developing a marketing program page from scratch in like 5 minutes because I hadn't done it. And I'm like, no, I don't have this page, but I have something that can make it for me, at least a starting point. And so people kind of seeing that, like that key turnover in people's mind was cool. And it was very engaging. And that's really the goal of one of those workshops, right? Is to get people involved and not just be talking at them for 3 hours. So that was good.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this is in your element. So we have to pivot this back to element 451 at some point. Obviously, we're at NAGAP, so we wanted to cover kind of the context of that. But, you at Muhlenberg have embraced a lot of what we're putting out there with generative AI. Let the listeners know, like, what was your approach on it? Because you're right, there is a lot of skepticism with AI. There's a lot of hesitancy to deploy it in some instances. So what was your mindset going into it? And tell us about some of the things you're doing and some of the results you're seeing.
Yeah, so interestingly, when we signed on with Element, the majority of the AI tools that are now in the system didn't exist. Mm-hmm. So honestly, it's been really an incredible value add for us. Like, we didn't go into it thinking we want to get this system that has all these AI tools. We just so happen to be lucky enough to be partners. And, I think for me as a marketer, it's a little easier to adopt these things because I can sort of conceptualize what I can do with them. I will say that we use it in the graduate and continuing ed space, and our vice president in that space is also super interested in AI. And so that helps. And so I'll send him these tools that Element's developing, and he's like, great, let's do it. Because like many, we are short-staffed and not the endless resources that some of these schools have. So, things like BoltBot, really giving us a 24/7 admissions counselor that can answer questions and let our advisors sort of focus on deeper conversations with students is incredible. The first time I realized it could translate languages, I was like, my mind was blown. And, going from there to just seeing things like Campaign Copilot. I remember sitting in a meeting, we were talking about long-term lead nurture for a graduate program. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to show off here a little bit. So I built out in the meeting projecting on the screen a 12-month nurture campaign, 1 email a month for 12 months. And I let it run in the background, and I pulled it up on the screen and showed the emails. And they were like, how did you do that while we were talking about this? I didn't. AI did. So it's been really cool to be a part of that development.
That's beautiful. Oh, to be a fly on the wall in that moment. Like the conversation's happening. By the time the conversation finishes, you're like, oh, is this what you were talking about?
Yeah, I literally minimize the window and say, okay, let's proceed. And then I'm like checking into the background. I say, okay, it's done. And they're like, what do you mean it's done? You were talking to me. Yeah. So, right. I think it's a really approachable way too for people that aren't necessarily like ready to get their arms around AI to see something like that everybody knows how long it takes to write an email, right?
For sure.
Even if you're not a marketer, you get it. Like it takes time. You got to design it and pick a picture. Mm-hmm. For people to see that and say, wow, imagine the other possibilities that exist with this technology outside of our, the CRM, but it gets people curious. And I think that's really important with AI.
Yeah, that's the word curious is one that I've said it on this podcast before. It's my biggest advice to people, right? I think curiosity is the key to success, not just with AI, but everything, right? If you don't remain curious and instead of being curious, you kind of push things away or block them out as if they're not there, there's no growth in that, right? And that's key. And maybe you're curious and it's a door that ends up being closed. That's okay. But if you don't ever seek that curiosity, you won't know what's on the other side of it.
Yeah. I recently sat in a session at another conference with Mallory and Jamie Hunt from Old Dominion. And Jamie's advice at the end was just get in there and play. Like just play. You're not going to break anything. You're not going to, put anything in the cloud that you don't want in there or whatever. Like you're not publishing this to the GPT store. And if you did, you can undo that. It's just
right.
Get in there and create and explore. And honestly, you're going to be surprised what you find.
Yeah. And I think there was a stigma even in the session that was solved for a lot of people whenever, artists showed off like, hey, when you use this, you can turn off to share what you're putting in it with OpenAI, like, so that it doesn't go into the learning model. And I think that's the fear of a lot of it is people. And there's been kind of I won't say fear mongering because there's certainly truth to it, with like apps on your phone and what it has access to and things that have happened before with companies like Facebook and where they're like, okay, these big companies are stealing what we're putting in them. There's that initial fear that people have, and there needs to be an alleviation. Number one, because there's been a lot more transparency with it. Apple's been a forefront leader in providing kind of transparency and more security surrounding your data. And now you see that more normal with companies, giving you control to toggle off or on whenever that's happening. And it's important for people to know OpenAI is no differently, or ChatGPT and some of these other companies that are leveraging generative AI. It's no different. There is security options there that you can manage and toggle on or toggle off because that's important.
Yeah. And the other thing I would say there is that, as artists pointed out in our session, OpenAI isn't learning from our data anymore. They've got such a wealth of data that they don't need.
Yep. They don't need
Muhlenberg College with data to improve their products. Which is great because and they obviously got privacy policy. They go as far as to say if you get in trouble for some reason for copyright, they'll pay your legal fees. That was something I learned yesterday. So
that's awesome.
They're clearly taking it seriously, and they've heard those concerns, especially OpenAI, and that's good to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got to ask it. We ask it to everyone. Whenever Shane Baglini, when are you in your element? When you're working, when you're at home, when you're at conferences, it could be anything, right? But when do you feel most in your element?
That's a great question. I would say you and I personally and others have talked a lot of sports this weekend.
Hey, come on now.
And, that's always and always will be my first love, sports. I started my career working in sports. So honestly, talking about the NFL draft last night was like, it was a nice reprieve from the conference. It was like, let's all fan out and talk football. But I would say that, diving into sports conversation is probably where I'm most in my element.
I was just saying to artists, and sorry, let me give context. I keep saying artists, and I'm sure that most of the people listening to this know who Artist Kadu is, but he is the CEO of Element 451. So that's who we're referencing with the summit and all that. And he's here at the conference with us at NAGAP. And I was talking to him and I said, I love sports. And one of the things I love about sports is the spirit of it. It has always been something that even in the worst times in society and the world when things go on has brought people together. And there's something beautiful about that. It's always been a common ground where we didn't stand on issues, but we were able to agree on that one common ground. That has been a beautiful thing. And, you know, I hear you say the sports, but like even whenever I hear people say that, like I can know that we're from where they're coming from. That's what they're talking about.
Yeah. And the thing I find fascinating about sports and sports conversation is it's the ultimate sort of equalizer, right? You know, talking to people last night that I've never met about their Detroit Lions fandom, and I'm like, I don't know you, but we're connecting on this level. Our provost at Muhlenberg College, Laura Furge, played in a golf tournament with us this year that we were sponsoring. It was for a homeless veteran shelter.
Wow.
And so it was myself, two other folks from our grad school, and our provost, which was great. She, you know, great show of support. But she's a golfer, and you know, one, I appreciated her coming and showing us that support. But being on the golf course like that with somebody, bonding and having that in common over a, you know, from a junior level person to the, you know, the highest academic position on campus, that's like a connector that is really unique that, you know, sports can provide. So that is probably where I'm most in my element.
That's awesome. I love that. Now, Muhlenberg has been so great in introducing the new aspects of Element, but there's always a constant focus to get better and build on what you have, what you're doing. We know a lot about what you've done so far. You're leveraging BoltBot, leveraging Copilot for campaigns, and all of those assistants that we have, internal and external. What is on the roadmap for y'all? What's next in your journey of Element and how you're using it and engaging with students?
Yeah, so our big summer project is going to be auditing all of our comms flows. So we partnered with a freelancer who's got a really deep background in higher ed, and it's just a fantastic writer and has a really good sense of like tone and voice. And so we're auditing them to make sure that we're being empathetic with our communications. And what I mean by that is it's overwhelming to go back to school or to go to grad school. It's a very different experience than your undergraduate when you're choosing a school.
Oh yeah. I got my master's degree. It was very overwhelming.
That's the most exciting time of your life. When you're coming back to school is hard. I mean, we hear from people that are trying to decide whether or not to even come into the meeting with the advisor because they don't know if they can do it. They're sitting in their car in the parking lot, debating whether or not to come in.
Yeah.
So in our communications, are we communicating in that way? That's saying, we know this is hard. We know this might be a challenge. We're not going to like tell you it's not going to be, but we're also going to tell you how we can support you and why Muhlenberg can get you where you want to go and help you with that. So that's what we're doing over the summer. And I think that combined with all of the other tools that Element gives us can really be a differentiator because we do a lot of test shopping, you know, filling out forms from other schools. And that's not something you see. Like when you go fill out a form from one of the big online players, you're just getting inundated with phone calls and emails. We don't want to be that.
Yeah, there's no intentionality behind it.
So so we want to be really intentional and make sure that we are communicating to our students in a way that sort of reassures them that you can do this, even though we're not going to lie to you and tell you it's going to be easy. You're adding something huge to your life. You may have job, kids, other stuff going on. So it's going to be a challenge, but we're also here for you. And so we want to make sure we're doing that.
Yeah, people resonate with that message of transparency and empathy, to your point. That is such a human connector. We speak of sports. We'll go full circle here. Those are human connectors. Having that empathy, being intentional and being transparent, that resonates with people. You know, I've talked to schools before when they were talking, actually, we had a interview recently. That episode will be released in a little bit with Michael Bettersworth from Texas State Technical College. And he said, he was telling us, you know, we went with Element because we put this massive list together of must-haves, kind of want, those kind of things. And he said, you were the only vendor that said no to some must-haves. And he was like, in all reality, that spoke louder to us of you all and the transparency than anything else did. So, in you know, those things, if people are going about it the right way and they're motivated and they're ready to take that step, that message is going to resonate with them. So I love that. All right, one last question before we wrap up here at NAGAP. if you had any piece of, and you're an incredible Element captain, like you use the platform how it was intended to be used, and you're able to communicate that with people and help people and the messages that you put out, and you don't ever hesitate from those opportunities. But if you had one piece of information for someone maybe coming in new to Element as an Element captain, what would that piece of advice be, that little nugget that you would give them as they start out on their journey?
I would say to not be afraid to seek out support from both Element support team and the Element user community. I think one of the things that my colleague Amy Benninger and I, we were a 2-person operation implementing Element. I think one of the things we really focused on was, let's do as much as we can in between our sort of weekly meetings with our implementation team, and then bring the hard stuff to them. But also not just say, do it for us, show us. So that would be advice too. Don't just rely on the implementation team to do everything for you. Certainly there's timelines and things that they're more advanced. They built our application and things like that, but they showed us how to do it then on the other end. The other piece of advice I would say would be that if you were the Element captain, hold trainings for your team and do it for like a while. Because the best part about Element, the reason we chose it, is that it's easier for our advisors to use. But that doesn't mean they are going to just log in and know how to use it.
Right.
So after the implementation, we had pretty much mastered the system, right? We've been working on it for 6 months. They are just getting access to it because we're going live. I mean, they had access before, but now we've got students in there, we're getting leads. So it's important to keep helping them learn and making sure that they're enjoying using the system, because it is a big change. If you're coming from new CRM or you have no CRM,
right,
it literally changes the way you operate. And so that change management needs, again, the empathy, being empathetic to them as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Wow. Such a great message. I love that. Well, Shane, thank you. I've enjoyed so much having the week to get to first time meeting you in person, first time spending some time with you. So I've enjoyed that very much. And thank you so much for actually being the first in-person guest on In Your Element. So everything's been virtual. So this is the first live in-person interview on In Your Element. So thank you. And I'm sure we'll hear from you again. We'll have you on a full episode sometime soon. All right.
Let's do it.
All right. Have a good one. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks.
Bye.
In Your Element is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too.
Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional.
Our shows help higher ed marketers and enrollment professionals find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Mallory Wilsey, Artis Kadu, Maya Demishkovich, and so many other of your favorite leaders in higher ed.
Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered, all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.